All right. I think we're going live here in a minute. All right, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keeping It Real. Welcome back. My name is Frank Klesitz. I am your co-host. Our other co-host, Greg Harrelson, had a family issue, could not be here today, but relax, you are still in good hands with me as your listener's advocate. I'm Frank Klesitz. My firm is called Viral Marketing. I'm here to do a great interview for you today. Nothing about that. We are going to talk about hiring virtual assistants. Now, this could be a virtual assistant in the United States. They could also be foreign. Let's not, play around with where they are. There's a lot we have to talk about to get systems and structures in place, and then kind of where they're at's really up to you with pay rates and where they're located in the world, especially now, kind of post-COVID. We're going to go really deep today, with JP, who I'll introduce here in a minute. That runs about 350 virtual assistants making phone calls that we talked here about pre in the meeting. He's a sales manager for many agents. This company's called Phone Animal. So he actually does this for a living, but I don't want to talk about that. We're going to talk about how he actually manages everything. And I'm going to extract all of the information for you, everything out of his head. All right. So I'm your advocate. So we have a chat here today. If you have any questions, ask it in the chat and I'll get to it here near the end. And a couple of housekeeping things before we start talking about hiring someone to make cold calls for you to pass seller leads. If you'd like to watch previous shows, we're doing this for 7 years now, I think 6 or 7 years. Go to keepingitreal.com and you can see all of our past shows. So you can kind of binge watch like Netflix, where they're all there and they're all high quality versus you don't really know exactly what you're going to get, when you're on YouTube, it serves up in some algorithm. So you can watch all the shows there. You can also go to the Real Geeks Facebook page. You can subscribe there. And if you do opt in, if you give us your email address on the Keeping It Real website, we're only going to email you things about the show. You're not going to be sold anything. You're not going to hear from my company or else's company. It's just information about the show. All right. So this is all educational today. We have nothing to sell you. We're going to dive deep. I want you to walk away from this interview today with what you need to know to hire somebody, get them on the phone, and find people who want to sell their house so they can pass that person to you, and you can go on the appointment and get the listing. How does that sound? You guys ready for a good show today? JP, are you ready for a good show?
I'm ready for a great show.
Well, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Very much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So you used to work for Tim Heil, who I believe has the top, he's up there, I don't know his ranking, but one of the top selling teams in Austin, Texas for Keller Williams. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think they're on pace to do
number 1 or 2.
Yeah. They're on pace to do like 2,000 units this year. Something crazy. 2,000
homes. All right. And Tim got his start, just getting on the phone, making a ton of phone calls before a lot of the technology came in place, and speaking with someone who was maybe thinking about selling their home, not really interested yet. And he would just take that person, put them on a follow-up date, send a little handwritten card, right? Mm-hmm. And hopefully follow up in the future. And he would call those nurtures.
Yep.
Right. And first year in the business didn't do much, but the second year, a lot of those nurtures hit. So where a lot of those, agents may throw those names away, he stayed in touch, correct?
Exactly.
But as the business built, I'm kind of telling your origin story because I know you know how this came here.
That's great.
He just didn't have time to jam out the cold calls anymore because he was following up with all of the nurtures that were taking listings. So we need to hire somebody to make the cold calls. That's kind of a limiting belief. Like, you have to be the one prospecting. Well, is it possible? Is it possible, JP, for someone else to do the cold prospecting grunt work and pass you the warm stuff as opposed to you having to do it yourself as a real estate agent? What is the verdict on that, JP?
It's an emphatic yes.
Okay.
Emphatic yes.
Now, people aren't going to believe you. They're going to say, no, that's not the case. All right. How many nurtures and what defines a nurture, let's say last month, have been passed to an agent to be followed up with?
Oh, last month we had over 5,500. So over 5,500 seller nurtures passed over to our clients.
And roughly how many calls did that take?
We made roughly a little over 5 million calls last month.
So you can do the math right there of how many calls it takes in this market when there's not very many sellers to find someone who's open to the idea of selling their home. Now define a nurture for me. Because everyone says, oh, these leads are bad. Like they don't know who I am. The phone number doesn't work. What qualifies someone as this goes in the nurture list of a seller lead versus, not?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a super important one because our scripting follows this too on how we qualify them. So we define it as 5 criteria. One is motivation, something clear, usually outside of price point, although it's an interesting market right now where we might consider price point being a clear motivation. Two, time frame is within 12 months or less. Usually, Frank, we do a lot of our prospecting through circle prospecting, which means we're calling neighborhoods that, zip codes that an agent would take a listing in and calling every homeowner in that area. And so usually they're farther out leads. So anything under 12 months. Three, we're making sure they're not committed to another realtor. Four, they agree to a follow-up time with our listing specialists. And then five, we're verifying contact information, making sure we're talking about the right home. We've got the right phone number, even though we're calling them on it. And then three, we want to get an email address because we want to be able to follow up with them, put them on smart campaigns, which we can talk about later.
Got it. So this can be a pretty eye-opening idea for someone they've been always the one on the phone trying to get somebody on the phone that wants to make a real estate decision.
Right.
But you can hire someone in front of that doing that and just pass the name to you when they meet those 5 criteria on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. Like Frank, in order to get to those, 20, 30, however many seller nurtures, we're like on average, we're getting 20 to 30 for an agent a month. In order to do that, you've got to make 15 to 20,000 calls. Think about how valuable your time is. Like, wouldn't you rather be, instead of like calling 20,000 people, wouldn't you rather call 20 warm, qualified people?
Yeah.
And so
I think everyone gets that. And they're just like, okay, how do we break this down? How do we work this? And I want to go through the whole timeline of you decide to do this to like, I got a listing. So let's take the next part of this interview and go through this whole timeline for the audience of how this is pulled off. So someone says, okay, I'm going to invest some money for someone to start calling around just listed, just sold, maybe just neighborhoods, maybe some distressed homeowner leads like FSBOs or expireds or delinquencies on taxes or bankruptcy or divorce, all those typical distress markers that is in real estate we know that are motivating reasons why someone needs to sell. The very first thing let's start with is, how do we pull the list? How do we get the list of the names and addresses of people who are probably most likely to sell their home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first, there's all these different types of like people you can call, like a FSBO or distressed owners, or you can get highly specialized and most likely to sell. And, let's call that somebody who's been in their house for over 10 years and have over 50% equity. Maybe they've got a few kids that are getting older, and you can tell. However, there's also just like circle prospecting data, and that's just like homeowner data and zip codes that you like to call. And that's, Frank, really where we focus on and where we highly suggest zip codes. Zip codes. So if, I'm in Austin, Texas, there's probably 20 zip codes in this area that I'd be willing to take a listing in. And so what I want to do is I want to identify those 20 zip codes, and there's tons of different data sources out there. There's, they're kind of like the back-end providers like your CoreLogic, your Black Knights. There's providers like PropStream.
Go to your title company too.
Title company, exactly. Yeah. And some of these providers are going to provide just the home address and the first name, last name of the person. And so you'll have to append phone numbers, and there's great skip tracing tools out there. I can be specific if you want me to, but if you look it up, I don't have a preference on necessarily any of them. Or there's like providers that already providing, the numbers, the home value, providers like a Cole Information, and Ivy Data. Some CoreLogic will do it, but those are some of the providers that we really hone in on to make these calls.
So when you're making that many calls, it's probably hard to give the few expireds there are right now, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have to pick a zip code, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Now, when you pick a zip code, this is something I've heard, is you always want to look for the turnover rate.
Yep.
So the turnover rate is how many homes are in the zip code. So you have to figure out how many single family homes are in the zip code. And then you take a look at how many homes sold in the past 12 months. And then you divide the two. One of the directions, I'm not sure. You divide the two to get a percentage.
Yeah.
All
We're
right.
not math majors.
We're not math. That's some complicated division. But you divide the two to get a percentage. What are do you know some of the turnover rates, at least in Austin? I mean, it can't be that high. of,
Yeah.
do you happen to know off the top of your head?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
That's a crazy question, but if you're an agent, that would be a really good thing for you to know, because you know, where am I going to get the highest probability of someone who wants to sell?
Yeah.
Clear on that. And those are probably going to be more of your median priced neighborhoods where everybody can afford to live, where homes are moving. And you go to the title company, you ask for the name and address and mailing address of everyone there, and they give you a spreadsheet, right? Then you go to Google and you type in phone append services. And there's a lot of them, and it's really hard to know which one's the best and which ones you should use, but there's plenty. Pick one, all right? And then you upload that list and you do a match by mailing address, not property address, you do the match by mailing address, and they'll append in, these are all the potential phone numbers that could potentially reach the homeowner, right? So now you have a spreadsheet in a high turnover neighborhood of all the phone numbers of all the homeowners there, correct?
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about DNC. How do you deal with people that have opted out from never having Don't Call Me?
Yeah. So we have internally purchased the national do not call list through the federal government. And just so that we're clear on like what is somebody on the do not call list, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically someone saying, I don't want to have any unsolicited phone calls. And they can register with the FCC, which is the Federal Communication, it's laws binding it. And so if somebody is on that list, you cannot call them to solicit a listing or a buyer's agreement without their consent. And so we have purchased the entire DNC, and they do it by area code, Frank. So if you were in Austin, Texas, where there's 3 or 4 main area codes, or in San Diego, where I believe you still are today, there's probably 3 or 4 main area codes that you can go in, and you actually get 5 free area codes with the national DNC. And so if you go, you can create a subscription account number. You can sign up. You can take that list that Frank just talked about with all of the phone numbers. You run it through their system, and it identifies which ones are on the national DNC, and you simply just remove them from your list. The unfortunate part there, Frank, is there's a lot of people on the national DNC these days.
Yeah. However, with the remaining ones that aren't, you're still getting good results. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And that's a little bit why you want to spread your net a little bit wider than necessarily target on just 100 houses and having a VA focus on that. We're still, in Austin, there's 1 million plus people here, and there's roughly 50% on the national DNC. So there's still 500,000 people we can proactively call for a nurture.
Great. All right. So, okay. So we take all of these contacts, and I'm guessing you load them into some type of dialer or some type of system. So you can, some type of CRM where you start calling all those. What do you recommend there?
Yeah. So whenever you're having a VA call, you're going to want to keep them on the phones as much as possible and not dealing with admin work, other types of systems, team meetings. Frankly, you want them to be on a phone system that's going to be able to allow them to maximize the number of calls they're making. And Frank, there's, I'm sure you'll go this here later. There's a lot of legalities around the dialer system, but we have a fully compliant dialer internally because we have a manual action on every single one of our phone calls, which I'm happy to discuss, but definitely suggest putting them in a phone system that is compliant, that allows them to make 600 and plus calls a day.
So what JP is getting at is there's a whole bunch of discussion around, if you Google this, called the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA. I believe it's a 1991 law, where the courts over time since then, because technology has changed, have very loosely defined what is an auto dialer. Meaning an auto dialer back in the day, I believe there's an old Simpsons episode, for those of you old enough that are Simpsons fans, of Homer gets a machine that dials 11111, then 1112, and 1113, and 114, and leaves a message. And just goes, the whole town hates him. Yep. Got it? That was an auto dialer. And the definition has been kind of expanded through court interpretation to be, it could be like your iPhone, or it's anything that dials a number without human intervention. And you can Google, and there's been a lot of plaintiffs' attorneys that have been going after people using a lot of the dialers that you see in the space for that very reason of kind of the gray area of the law. However, which is good news for our industry, at least from the sales side, is there was a recent decision where Facebook was taken to task for their auto dialer, and they didn't bow down. And it went to the Supreme Court. I believe they ruled 9-0.
9-0. Yeah.
9-0. So 9 justices declined it. That an auto dialer has a very narrow definition of kind of like what Homer Simpson was using in the Simpsons episode, essentially. So it's okay. Well, I don't know if it's okay. There still has to be a lot of it there, but it's a very strong law from the Supreme Court to use dialers where, it's, there's actual real numbers to real consumers, and it's not just randomly picking numbers to call, right?
Yeah.
For the most part.
To be clear, like what Frank was describing at the beginning, like calling 11112, 11113, that's random sequential. That's like more of your considered auto dialer. But if you're picking, zip codes that, purposeful numbers, that's not random.
And even better, instead of having the computer, dial the numbers, there's a real human clicking to call. There's human intervention, click to call. And when you use these dialers that combine human intervention, all right, and have been upheld by the courts, meaning they've been taken to task, they've been sued, and the court's like, it's not an auto dialer. That's key with whatever system you use, right? You're probably good to go, all right? Now, the question with that is how many dials and how many contacts could a full-time VA work? So I guess my question would be is when you hire someone to make these calls, how many hours a day are they actually like on the phone? Because they probably have breaks and training.
Absolutely.
How many hours a day are we talking here?
Yeah. So above 6.5 hours a day of dial time.
Got it. Now on that dial time, how many dials are they probably getting through on average?
800 to 900 a day.
That's amazing. All right.
Crazy, man.
And you have to call 800 to 900 people to get actually how many homeowners to talk to you?
So we're averaging about 60 contacts from that. So about a 6 to 8% contact rate. Okay.
That may sound bad, but 60 to 80 people a day, you're calling them, or the VA's calling them and saying what, JP?
Yeah. So you're starting off, and I won't go through the whole script, but something very simple. It's like, hi, Frank, my name's JP. How are you today? You might be like, I'm okay. What is this about? Yeah. Like, Frank, I know this is out of the blue, but I'm actually calling with a local real estate team. And some people like to go with, hey, I have some motivated buyers, which in this market is probably true because everyone's got 400 buyers that they're working with. Mm-hmm. Or you just be like, hey, I'm in your area. I was curious if you thought about making a move in the next 12 months. You might be like, no, JP, no, I haven't really thought about it. And be like, hey, no problem, Frank. Certainly understand. Again, I know I'm calling out of the blue, but have you thought about making a move in the next 2 to 3 years? And at that point, you might be like, well, yeah, 2 to 3 years is a long time. Like, actually, me and my wife were talking about it, and we've got kids moving out. Yeah, something like next 2 to 3 years. And now we've got their attention, Frank. Even if they're saying 2 to 3 years, we're not going to leave that call at 2 to 3 years. It's going to be, we're going into motivation. Be like, okay, certainly understand. So 2 to 3 years, what's got you thinking about making that move in 2 to 3 years? And it jumps back to the nurture criteria that I pointed out earlier of now we've started the motivation. And so now I'm going to get out. Okay. You're thinking about making a move in 2 to 3 years because your kids are, you're going to be an empty nester. Got it. What would you be looking for in the next house? And we start bringing out more and more motivation. And now we're moving into time frame. And at time frame, be like, okay, so I know you mentioned 2 to 3 years, but if I was able to identify X house with X, Y, Z a little bit sooner, is that something that you'd be interested in? And at this point, they'd be like, yeah, maybe. And maybe you can't cut down the time frame. That's okay. It's still good to know. But a lot of the times we're able to start cutting down the time frame. Be like, yeah, well, actually, that's interesting. If you were able to find X, Y, Z, then yeah, we'd certainly like to take a look in this area. Like, great. Well, I know since your house is not listed, are you currently? I'm assuming you're not working with a realtor. It's just an assumptive close there, Frank. And I don't want to bore anybody. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
So then we're just confirming, because if they did have a listing agreement with another agent, you have to be sensitive to that. You can't be doing that. You got to hang up the phone. And then 4, you're moving into an agreed upon follow-up time with you, the listing specialist. And so at that point, be like, hey, I know that, again, I've called you a little bit out of the blue here. But what I think makes the most sense is for you to talk to my listing specialist. Do you have any availability next Thursday? Do mornings or afternoons work better for you? And you kind of just getting them to agree. And then, and actually before that point, Frank, you really really want your virtual assistant to hype you up, get that person excited, because you're about to do a transition from, somebody that they've have a little rapport with, some trust with, to somebody else. And so you've got to get that VA knowing basically like your listing pitch, like, hey, you're going to love Frank. Frank, Klesitz, he's
Such
been
a
in
great
business for 12 years.
So smart.
He's so smart. He's a genius,
Yes.
as I think Tim once said.
Savant.
He's sold over 1,000 homes. He always gets top dollar in the shortest amount of time. Some whatever those 2 to 3 key bullet points, but to get them really excited to speak with you. And then 5, you're verifying their information. So you're walking through, hey, so I know I called you on this number. Is this the best number to reach you at? Is this the best address, home address? So just want to confirm that this is the right address. And Frank, the funny thing is we're actually usually able to uncover a second property at that point. If they have a second property, they're usually bringing up, like, actually, I've thought about selling this house too. Could you guys help me out with that? Absolutely, we can. And you're excited about it. And then you're moving into email address. And usually email address is something that people are a little bit more sensitive over. But you try to frame it the right way of, hey, simply just want to make sure that we're keeping you up to date. Like, I know that XYZ is important to you, so we're not going to spam you. We're going to do our best to make sure we're keeping you up to date with, the market and houses that you would be interested in. And this is a really, really good way for us to keep you updated without, bugging your phone every single day. And so we're usually probably 60 to 65% of the time able to extract that email address. And so, yeah, and then we're wrapping it up and then there's more steps after that, but that's kind of how the script goes.
One of the things I'm going to do for you guys, JP, I'm going to ask you for the script, and
Yeah.
I'm going to pin it below YouTube here at the very top. That's something I'm going to do. So when you're watching the replay of this on YouTube, the script will be there. But we could sit here. You can Google scripts all day long. Okay, there's nothing great there. What I think is so cool with what JP shared is he didn't give us the script. He gave us the active listening criteria that the callers have gone through. And that's a pro, you just heard. What I mean by that is, like, when you talk to someone, your goal is to uncover motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And here's some general questions, but you have to actively listen so you don't sound like just Neanderthaling your way through a script, right?
Exactly.
No, seriously. Like, I've heard people make calls where they literally said something and then they're on to the next line in the script that doesn't even address what they just said because they aren't active listening. By the way, you can Google and go to YouTube and type in active listening. And whenever you have somebody on the phone, just have them watch the whole first page of YouTube videos for active listening. And that will really get them up to speed of like how to be good on the phone. It's very standard call center training. So we have motivation, time frame. Are you working with a real estate agent? Agent follow-up time. They talk you up, verify their information and email address. These are all the criteria that I would assume you're listening to on the recordings for, a proper nurture.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So making these calls, and they're probably, out of 60, 80 calls in a high turnover neighborhood, they got to be like 1 or 2 a day. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, exactly. 1 to 2 a day. About one in 40 contacts is about what we average.
Not bad. Okay. So what happens? They hang up with the person. They're like, oh, great. I found a nurture, ring a little bell. Now what?
Yeah. That's
gotta have the bell.
Yeah, that's the issue. And this is, I want to make sure agents listen up because this is where things can fall through because we have really good data. And Frank, I'm sure we'll talk about this later of like how many of our nurtures actually do list within 12 months. And it's pretty strong data, but it doesn't mean anything if an agent doesn't follow up. And so there's a few things. One, you're going to, so if it was us, we would email over the nurture notes. And so it would come in a criteria that said motivation, time frame, follow-up time, not committed to a realtor, and there would actually be a recording attached, assuming that we're in a state that allows, a
one party state.
One party state versus two party state. And at that point, we desperately want the client to put this into their CRM.
I like desperately. That's a key word. Desperately is the key word here.
It's
so
a
you're
team,
desperate,
right? It's a team game here, Frank. And so we're doing we're setting up the pass. We need you to knock down the shot.
Email comes in, goes into CRM.
Email comes in, put it in your CRM, or if you have an admin, have them put it in your CRM. Make sure there's notes. Make sure you've put the follow-up time, all of that good stuff.
Listen to the recording so you have context for your follow-up call.
Listen to the call recording, and it's such a great way to build rapport. You're going to pick up on something. Maybe they just had a birthday and they just recently talked about it. Like, people love to talk about themselves, and so our ISAs do a great job of our VAs do a great job of just uncovering some of that. And so, anyways, to get back to the point, put it in your CRM. That's point number one. Two is there's going to be a follow-up plan in there. You're going to want them to first have that follow-up date very clear, and then you're going to want to have a follow-up plan. So, Frank, this is kind of your specialty. I know Viral is really, really good at nurturing databases and having nurture follow-up plans. And so you could probably speak better to this than me, but you're going to want to have some type of home valuation emails going out. And I know that Real Geeks has a great seller tool involved. And so, kind of a mix of Viral and what your follow-up plans and what you're suggestive and just let your CRM do the work. That's the beautiful thing is with these smart follow-up plans, you just have to put them in and click a button and your sequence is already built out. Is that right, Frank?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I'll elaborate on that. So email comes in, maybe it goes in your CRM. If you got that integration set up, great. Yep. Email comes in, awesome. Very first thing you should do is listen to the call recording so you have context of what the conversation was said. So when you follow up, you can say, you just spoke with my assistant. You talked about this and this, and then they give you all the information. It's a beautiful handoff. All right. And here's my little tip. I'm going to give you my secret strategy. Pull your phone out, record a video on your, I believe this is called a cell phone, on your cell phone, and just
could be an auto dialer.
Could be. I mean, whatever. Record them. Yeah. It could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. How they interpret it. Well, how they interpret it. I know. But the point is not anymore. They won't. They not anymore. It's not anymore. But record a video, referencing the call, and just text at them because the phone number works. You don't know the email is that good, but the phone number is correct. It's probably a cell number, probably. Yeah. Right. And just text them a video of you saying from listening to the call. Then you call them, say, I just shot you a video. That's me. And you talk to them. And I mean, within 5 minutes,
yes.
The whole, got a call in 5 minutes for a lead. You call that lead back right away. You drop what you're doing. You call them back. You listen to that call recording. You record the video on the phone, send it to them, and then you call. So you kind of preface you. Now that's your job. That's the human being working. But once it goes into your CRM, you could certainly have a email that goes out with a video about you and your reviews, and you just spoke with my assistant that drips out. Yeah. Certainly Real Geeks, among many CRMs, but Real Geeks has a great seller tool, all right, that you put it into the CRM, it starts dripping out, I believe every month, a home value update of what the person's home is worth because they verified their home address, and they get really good information of what their home is worth going out. Yeah. Got it? In addition to that, you can step it up and start some type of nurture plan of sending videos out of market updates and buyer and seller Q&A. And that's what viral marketing does. But when you start add maybe in a video marketing drip campaign of some type, some 36 touch, the seller tool through Real Geeks is dripping out, home value updates, right? And you follow it up right away. The positioning and the nurturing is there, plus follow-up dates in the future. So if someone says, call me back in a year, you cut it down to 6 months. Someone says, call me in 2 years, you cut it down to a year. You always cut the follow-up date in half. Definitely. Dude, you're going to have a pipeline of potential sellers, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, I can't, we got a number of clients that use the Real Geek CRM, and it's always leads to better conversion. But and we have a number of clients that use Viral as well. But that's not the point. I think the point is like having a follow-up plan is really, really key. But also outside of that follow-up plan, even if your VA says call them in 3 months, doing that video. I love that idea, Frank. I haven't suggested that. I'm going to take that as my own tip now. That's not
that's a really powerful one. So be careful with that one. That might be too much for people.
That might be too much. I mean,
might not be able to handle all that business.
Takes 2 minutes to record it, and I guess 10 seconds to send it out. But calling them that first day is really important, and it's a very non-intrusive call. It's hi Frank. I know you spoke with my assistant JP earlier today. I'm actually Joe with Joe Realty, and I know you're thinking about making a move because your kids are moving out and you're going to be an empty nester. I simply wanted to call and introduce myself. We've got a follow up in a few months here, but I wanted to make sure you have my contact information. Really looking forward to it. And that usually leads to a conversation right there and then.
One of the things I have to say is that when you hire someone to do the type of calls that we're talking about here on this Keeping It Real, and you're getting 1 or 2 nurtures a day. Well, the first day you're like, oh, this is great. The second day, great. Third day, great. Fourth day, great. Fifth day, second week, great. Third week, fourth week. Oh man, I got 60 people. Okay, great. They all have follow-up tasks. 3 months in, what? 150, 180 seller nurturers in the system for follow-up and talking to seeing what's going on. It can get overwhelming. And you may ask yourself, why can't I do lead generation that gets me more bottom of the funnel seller leads? Why can't I do something like, I don't know, radio or TV or some other source, like someone calls me and they want to sell right now? Well, the reality is because that doesn't really exist. It really doesn't. You might get it from your database, right? But the reality is of getting people who want to sell is you have to get them upstream before they start making relationships with other realtors.
Yeah.
Speak on that, JP. Talk to me about top of funnel nurtures.
Yeah.
A lot of these people are a year or 2 out, but that's the point.
That's the point. It's getting you involved as early in the process. And there's been several studies on this where I believe the latest stat that I've read from the NAR is 83% of homeowners go with the first agent they meet with, which is why it's so critical for you to engage with them a year out, maybe 2 years out, which is why we do circle prospecting and why circle prospecting can be highly effective. Because, we hear that frustration all the time, Frank, like, but this person's 6 months out. This person's 9 months out. Like, can you set me an appointment that will close tomorrow? No, that's pretty hard. And if I did, I would be charging you a heck of a lot.
JP, the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no. And so, circle prospecting is a great way because before these people are even really like thinking about selling, you've now just engaged them in a conversation, or maybe they've like barely thought about it. They've had like 1 or 2 discussions. Now you're the person that's top of mind. You're the person that's already engaged them. You're the person that's their trusted advisor as they're thinking about like, okay, this market is crazy right now. Should I be selling? Where would I move to? How do I buy a house if I sell something? Mm-hmm. And now you've built that relationship before anybody else can. And we know that 83% of the time they're going to list with you.
So I want to throw out some lingo that I don't think is really relevant that JP is using because it's some old school lingo, but it's this concept of circle prospecting really quick. Circle prospecting comes from you pick a house that you sold or sold and you draw a circle around it in some type of mapping software. And you grab all the names of the homeowners inside that circle and you call them all. Yep. Is that correct?
Exactly.
That's not really what we're doing here. We're zip coding.
Yeah.
You're pulling the zip code.
Right.
It's not a circle. It's probably more of like a rectangle.
Yeah.
Whatever the zip code is.
Yeah.
So you're pulling the zip code and you're just calling everybody in the zip code. Circle has nothing to do with it, but it's kind of a lingo of just like kind of calling it. It's basically, it's a metaphor, not a metaphor, a synonym. Is it a synonym? It's a synonym for calling everybody. I believe that's the same.
Yeah. Cold calling homeowners.
Yeah, cold calling. All right. So I just want to clear that up for anyone that has any questions. All right. So I want to transition now the interview to the hiring and the training and the management of someone doing this. And this is the work. This is where all the work is. So if you think it's just a matter of hiring somebody and magically this happens, the answer is absolutely not, right?
Right.
So JP, let's talk about big question in everyone's mind is hiring in the United States or hiring overseas, pros and cons.
Yeah, I'm going to be blunt here, Frank, because there's pros and cons to both.
You've done it.
Pros. So yeah, we've had over 100 US based ISAs, and now we have 0 US based ISAs, and we have we're close to 350 overseas ISAs. So pros about a US based ISA. One, they just know the US, they know the culture, they're from here, they're going to know your area. Most likely you're going to hire them locally. They're going to be able to convert, they're going to be able to get more nurtures. That's just, they might even be able to take it farther down the funnel to you and get you appointments, physical appointments. So those are the pros. They're pretty obvious. It sounds, oh, that's good. The cons are it's impossible to keep US based ISAs.
It's a brutal job.
It's a brutal job. Like cold calling sucks. Can I say that?
Yes. No, it's brutal. It's a very brutal job. Let's be honest of what it is.
Yeah. And there's a reason why most people don't do it, why they don't like to do it, why they like to leverage it out. And after a few months, maybe max a year, they're going to burn out because they're making so many phone calls. They're being told no. That's one reason why they're going to burn out. Two is they're going to realize how much they're making on the deal versus how much you're making on the deal. And they're going to want a piece of that pie. They're going to want to grow in their career. And naturally they view that as the real estate agent. And so turnover rate is really massive. Our retention rate was 40% whenever we had US based ISAs. Our retention rate in the Philippines. Over 1 year, over 12 months. In the Philippines, it's over 90%. And I mean, just like consistency is invaluable. It's valuable. So those are a little bit of the pros and cons about a US based ISA or VA. Somebody overseas, the pros about them are almost like the inverse. Like one, they're going to stay with you for a long time. We've seen it with our retention rate, both in the Philippines and in Jamaica, where we're also located, that, 80% in Jamaica, 90%. That's just like, they learn your systems. They learn how to communicate with you. They become a part of your culture, it's just massive. Two, the obvious pro is that it's cheaper.
Much cheaper.
And much cheaper. I guess I didn't say that on the US side, but it's going to be 25% to 40% of the cost all in. And just like the initial, it's going to take 6 months for most US based ISAs to be productive and for you to get any type of return on them. It's a lot easier to manage that whenever you're spending, $1,000 to $2,000 a month versus, $4,000 a month with a US based person. So those are the pros. Cons, culture is a big piece. We always get hey, is there an accent? Or, I'm from the South, and, any type of accent we hang up on, or, those types of things. And yeah, absolutely. They'll lose out on opportunities that a US based person will gain. But at the end of the day, all we care about is that ROI number. Are they producing?
Make up for it in volume.
They make up for it.
And we'll go through more deeply on some of that stuff. So that was a wide question. So we're going to go into pay rates, we're going to go into hiring. But my next question I do want to address is licensing requirements in certain states for even doing this. Are there some states that are just off limits that I should probably have brought this up at the beginning that don't even listen to this interview? You can't do it. Yeah.
There's a few states that are pretty challenging. Oregon is one of them that comes top of my head, that has pretty strict regulations and that their board does, but that's the one that probably sticks out.
And if you choose to do it in certain states where the regulations are tight, it depends upon the state. You got to be listening to those phone calls. You got to make sure they're on script, and you better have a real estate attorney write an opinion letter on the script and the training that you give the people on the phones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Training, scripting, super key. And then processes. What's your process if somebody goes on the DNC?
Yeah.
What is that?
You have a documented process. When someone says, take me off your list, it suppresses them from any future phone calls.
Yeah.
Yes. Great. Okay, so let's talk about hiring overseas. Sounds like that's the direction you guys go, and that's what we got to do. So Philippines. So $4 to $6 an hour is
Yeah.
about a solid pay, a great work from home pay for this position in the Philippines. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Anything else on that?
$4 to
That's all
$6.
it is.
It's work from home now. Obviously, you can build out incentive structures, but kind of the base hourly rate is $4 to $6. There, you're getting 7 hours of work, 8 hours of work each day, and they love it. It's a great, it's a very competitive pay over in the Philippines. I know it might sound small, but there's different costs of living.
Yes.
They're well taken care of, and
That pay can change someone's life, especially when they don't have to spend 2 hours in the morning and evening overnight driving into the city on jeepneys,
yeah,
or they don't have to hire a care for children and they can stay at home.
yep.
It's a very life-changing opportunity to work for an American from home there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have a number of workers come to us that are commuting 3 hours each way. I mean,
Yes.
6 hours of their day is commuting.
And it's dangerous.
It's dangerous.
So I've been there. I was on that commute. I've been to Manila and it was dangerous. So then to not have to do that, to be able to work from home is very powerful.
Yeah.
All right. Now I want to give everyone an option. Let's say, okay, I want to hire someone in the Philippines. I recommend just type in Philippine jobs into Google, and you'll see some jobs there at the very top. Click one, and then you'll be on like Google's job site where it syndicates in all of the jobs. And you could see employers and types of jobs and what people are posting. You could type in like competitive, type in brokerages and type in competitive. You see what the posts are all there. You can see all the job posts. And what you'll notice is that all of the jobs are in the Philippine peso. Well, that's what it is. All you have to do is convert how many pesos it is per month. They're saying per month. What you get is usually how they quote it, not per year. It's usually per month there. And then you convert that to the US dollars, divide that by 160 hours a month, and that's the per hourly rate.
Yep.
And what you'll find is a lot of it's a lot less than 4. So when you're offering 4 to 6, you're going to be able to get some pretty competitive talent for doing outbound calls.
Yeah. Someone with
Sound
experience already.
Yeah. Where would you recommend someone could go to maybe post a job ad for someone that they're looking to hire somebody in the Philippines?
Yeah, that's so there's a ton of Facebook groups that are dedicated to hiring Filipinos and hiring Filipinos within real estate. And so I would suggest like just typing that into your Facebook, Filipino ISA, Filipino virtual assistant, and just asking to join a lot of those groups. They're looking for job posts. Upwork, which is a freelancer contractor website. There's a lot of Filipinos over there. You can just sort it and search by Filipino. You can do it by the country. And then 3, like obviously we've got a lot of people here, Frank. And so we get a ton of our employees through referrals. And so if you know somebody who has a virtual assistant, maybe just contacting them and asking them if their VA knows anybody, because I can guarantee they do.
A lot of the big companies that do this, you won't even see them advertising on the job boards anymore because they kind of get not the best, like any job.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So they go to their employees and they'll say, look, I'll pass you maybe $100, $200 if the person lasts 6 months or 90 days.
Yep.
Why don't you go on your Facebook? Why don't you go into some Facebook groups? Why don't you email some friends and see who's looking for a position? And then you can kind of vet them out based upon where they live and the dialect and everything else and pass them on over to me. And I'll give you a bonus. They actually stick around.
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful way to maybe find somebody, and you would just treat them like any other person that you would hire.
Yep.
That's it, right? Interview them, hear their English, hear how they speak. They'll probably do just fine.
Yeah.
One
key thing with whenever you hire them that you wouldn't have for a US based person is you do want to check their system, make sure that they have internet.
like the computer system. Yeah.
Yeah. Over 10 megabits, that it can handle your soft phone system, that strong internet. So that's just one thing. And then 8 gigs of RAM for their computer is usually what we suggest. And they're usually providing that.
Good. When it comes to paying somebody, I would recommend weekly. People really like getting paid weekly. You can also pay them every 2 weeks.
Yep.
But ask them how they want to be paid, because there's different conversions of currency. PayPal is probably the most popular. TransferWise, which is wise.com, has changed. I believe Remitly might be another one. I'm not sure. Is there any other ones that come to mind of how to pay?
Yeah, so Payoneer is the primary one we use.
Payoneer
is another one. But if you just have a one-off, I would suggest like a one-off VA. If you just have one, TransferWise, which is Wise, and PayPal are phenomenal. Really easy, simple.
Cool. All right. So you find this person, they reply back to a job ad that, pay $5 an hour, 40 hours a week. Here's the criteria. I mean, how do you kind of interview them, and what's kind of the managerial process to train this person and make them good?
Yeah, so we've got a pretty thorough interview process. So, but instead of like talking about the process, because everyone has their own process, I'll just talk about like
Key
what we look
things.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, they're going through an initial interview. We're looking at what's your past experience? Do you have any sales experience? How are you communicating? What's your English sound like? Do you have the necessary system requirements? And then we're doing a little bit more in-depth interview. And this kind of relates to like the key traits we're looking for. So cold calling's hard, as we have established. And so we want someone who enjoys a challenge, or at least can handle a challenge, and that's assertive. And so, like a key question of like, tell me about a challenge that you overcame, and what was your thought process? That would be a type of question that our recruitment team would ask, because it's important. Like, they're going to be told no a lot. The next piece is we're looking for someone who is a relationship builder, someone who can build relationships. They have a good rapport. You enjoy talking to them on the phone. There's some tonality and energy that they have. And then probably the next two key areas, Frank, would be like someone who's coachable, teachable. They're coming in and learning something completely brand new. They're going to get smacked in the face, but are they going to take your feedback and change? And one way to test for that is give them a script, role play with them
Audition them.
and then give them feedback, see what they do. Frankly, we do that with our salespeople that are calling real estate agents. And so it's a great way. And then and then the fourth one is results oriented. So, what jobs have you done in the past? Tell me about your metrics. Did you succeed? Did you not succeed? We're trying to see, like, their whole job is going to be numbers and results. Want to make sure that motivates them.
Got it. Do you pay bonuses? Do you recommend bonuses, just flat pay?
Yeah. So we definitely pay bonuses. We pay bonuses based off of nurtures, because that's when we're stopping it and handing it off to clients. However,
don't you think that might push the nurtures not being as high quality?
So we've got a quality assurance team. We have 10 people who are just dedicated to grading the calls. And so it has to pass our QA team for it to be considered a nurture. And actually, before it passes
you're talking to a pro, everybody. That's pro answer.
Yeah. And so, but if I had this in-house, let's say I'm running JP Wells, real estate team, and I just have one VA and it's just me, then I would bonus them at first off of nurtures for the first 60 to 90 days. And the reason why, Frank, is I want them to get some wins under their belt. It's going to take probably 3 to 6 months to get a closing, if not potentially longer, depending on what you're calling. And so you want them to feel motivated and get some early wins. Again, it's a tough job. Like, get them feeling like there's something good happening, and you can do that by nurtures, but eventually you want to do it based off of closings. Absolutely. That's the end goal.
Meeting rhythm.
Yeah.
So you hire them. There's a meeting rhythm. What is it?
Meeting rhythm, you're going to at least want a check-in once a day. So we get start of days, end of day reports, and we have a pretty massive management team, Frank. And so, like, our team leaders are doing call shadowing all day, every day. They have trainings, 3-4 times a week, role plays, all that good stuff. But again, I'm trying to speak to, like, just if I had a single agent, then I would have them send me a single start of day, end of day report. The start of day would be like, hey, here's my numbers goal. So here's how many calls I'm going to make. Here's how many nurtures I'm going to get. And here's the areas I'm focused on. So today I'm focused on 78723 and 78721 is what I would want to see. And at the end of the day, I'd want them to include how many calls did I make? How many nurtures did I get? How many contacts did I get? What were some of the key lessons learned that I might need help with training on? I want them to be reflectively thinking about that. And then just an overall, here's my month to date stats. And so that's something. And then at least bare minimum, you need to have training once a week. Training never stops. Like, I know we haven't kind of gone into our training program, Frank, but training just never stops. Just like if you had an in-house employee.
And I would
So
assume you're listening to the calls and coaching them to the calls. That's the training.
that's the training.
It's not rah-rah.
Nope.
It's data focused training based upon the conversations and getting them better at the active listening and what to say.
Absolutely.
Which leads to a question. I'm watching your comments over everyone if I watch this, but here's a great question. What are the callers advised to say for specific questions that are market specific questions that are asked during a call?
Yeah. I love that question.
Mhm.
This is kind of
comes up all the time in the training.
Comes up all the time. So Frank, pretend you just asked me that question. Be like,
JP, what's the average absorption rate and adjustment of the 3-month moving average of the median price point in Maui?
Yeah, Frank, that's a fantastic question. And that's exactly why you need to speak with my listing specialist, Joe. I'm honestly a little bit new here, but Joe has been in the business for 20 years, and that's exactly why I need to get you on the phone with him. Do you have some time this week, to speak? So we're like immediately flipping those market specific questions or pricing related questions into them meeting with our agent almost immediately.
That's great.
Yeah, a little bit. And of course you want to like try to, if that's like at the very beginning of the call, then you might be like, hey, well, it sounds like you're at least like thinking about selling. That's a great question. I'm not the best one to prepare, but that's why I need to get you on the phone with my listing specialist. However, like, what's got you thinking about making a move, or why is that question coming up? Depending on what the question is.
How long are these conversations? Like talk time, like for like an actual nurture, not talk time for like a contact. Yeah. Like if a nurture is identified, what's the average length of the conversation for a nurture that's passed?
5 minutes.
5-minute conversation.
Yep.
Yeah. They're not on the phone for like an hour.
Yeah. They're not on the phone for an hour. If they're on the phone for an hour, then you need to train them on how to get off the phone quicker.
Yeah. They're saying the wrong things.
They're saying the wrong things. They're asking too many questions. They're building too much rapport.
Too much rapport. Yeah. You're going to lose listening to them.
You're going to lose. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. This is great stuff. I don't think what are possible questions to ask you. Money. Let's talk money. Okay. So if someone were to go do this on their own, let's say they're going to spend $800 a month for $5 an hour for a VA.
Yep.
Or maybe it's $450 with bonus. And I don't know what dialer they're going to use, but they can get a top of line dialer. Let's throw in $200.
Sure.
All right. And that's pretty much it. I know you have some DNC stuff to scrub. Let's amortize that in plus the cost of numbers as $100 a month. So your number cost for pending numbers, scrubbing DNC, stuff like that. You're in let's call the dialer 100. You're in $1,000 a month. Yeah. Not bad, right?
Not bad.
And $1,000 a month can produce about 1 to 2 nurtures a day.
Yeah.
That's a great investment.
It's a great
2,000, 3,000 is a great investment for that. I'd take that.
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
No. The only issue there, I mean, it's a great investment. The only thing that you're not accounting for, Frank, is the cost of my time to find this person.
Well, yeah, that's going to be for hiring you guys for the management. But if someone were to go do it on their own,
hard cost,
a couple grand.
Yeah.
So one caller is a couple grand. And I think that's a solid way of doing it, especially when you need sellers, man. You can generate them off Facebook leads. You can generate them off pay-per-click from finding out what their home is worth, the whole home value ads. Very common. Real Geeks will set that up for you and have, find out what your home is worth, Facebook ads, find out what your home is worth, Google pay-per-click, stuff like that. But we need to add another pillar where you're just, outbound. You have your inbound strategy into your CRM. We need like an outbound strategy, and you can hire somebody to make the phone calls. And I like the idea of how you're going with zip codes, because you're just gonna, once you run the DNC scrubs, you're just gonna kind of run out of people to call if they're smaller than your lists. For someone to make that many calls every single day, it's just more of a volume game within the zips. If there was a size, I guess, if you were to have someone call for, say over the course, they were to call over the course of 90 days, how big does the list need to be for a 90-day kind of one caller, would you say?
Yeah, so roughly 25,000 actual numbers.
25,000 numbers.
And let me kind of show you how I got there, Frank. So you're calling 800 people a day. But the reality is you're not calling that, that homeowner, those 800 people just one time and then, forget it.
Yeah. I mean, how many times do you call a number before you give up?
Yeah, there's a call cadence. So we're calling each homeowner 4 times within a month. So once a week. And then after that, if they haven't picked up, we're putting them on our archive. And after 6 months, we reconsider them a new lead at that point.
So if one person's making those number of dials, just statistically speaking, you're going to kind of exhaust a list of 25,000 in 3 months.
Yeah, in 3 months. But if you're going, if you think about it, so if I'm making 800 calls today to, list 1, 800 calls tomorrow to list 2, I've got 5 of those. So 5 times 800 is 4,000. Well, I'm recalling most of those people again for a full month.
Yep, that's correct.
So you could take 5,000. So say I've made contacted with 1,000 of those people. So now my list is at 5,000 for a month. So I multiply that by 3. We're actually at only 15,000. Now there's some leeway. There's going to be bad numbers. There's going to be contacts, which is the reason why I said 25,000. But I'd say about 25,000 is a really healthy number for 3 months to call.
That's great.
Yeah.
God, what good information, everyone. JP, thank you for sharing all this.
Yeah, I'm hoping this helps.
It's incredibly helpful.
Good.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Got to run. We'll watch the rest of the replay. Let's take a look here. Other questions, guys, let me know. Do your callers have direct access to transfer a call directly to you immediately? Ever played with the played the live transfer game?
Yeah, we have. So they all do have the ability to live transfer, and that actually depends on the phone system you pick. There's some dialing systems, phone systems that don't allow it. Here's what I suggest though. On the going back to like what we primarily do, and I'm using the term circle prospecting, even though it's picking a zip code.
It's polygon prospecting.
Polygon prospecting, exactly. Weird shape prospecting. And usually those people are longer term out. And so we have found that whenever we try to force a warm transfer in those types of situations, it's actually pretty off-putting because those people could be 6 to 9 months. And now it's like we're almost losing the nurture at that point. So at that point, we really suggest the follow-up plan that we talked about earlier, immediately putting them in your CRM, immediately calling them, maybe a text with a video, putting them on the home valuation, follow-ups on Real Geek Seller Tools, something like that is what we suggest. With an inbound buyer lead, or any inbound lead that someone's raising their hand, absolutely, we want you to do a live transfer, a warm transfer.
Yeah. So outbound, not so much, but inbound for sure. Live transfers are powerful.
Powerful.
What about having someone, this is probably more for the larger agents out there, larger teams that have done lead generation for years. What about having someone call through all the database archives? What about someone sending the Real Geek CRM archives over to you to call through those? You ever played that at all? Or has it all just been pure zip codes?
No, we've played that game. I'd say the majority of our customers have us focus on sellers because that's
why someone's there. But could that same person just load up all of the archives in the database and start calling those?
Highly suggested. And then in some cases, depending on the client, if they're like, hey, I've got 10,000 people in my database and I haven't touched any of them, and I get 100 inbound leads from various sources, and I'm not doing any follow-up. That's where we start because there's a lot of gold in that. And so really we try to bucket into like 6 months and under, 6 to 12 months, and then 12 months and over of when the lead came in. And we start with the 6 months and under, and we've got a pretty aggressive call cadence for those that involve also like emailing. We definitely want some type of nurturing email campaign or texting, if that's allowed, to be part of that.
In your history of doing this, I don't need the name of the client, who had the most callers and what market? Like, what's the biggest you've seen this scale up in a certain market? You talk about 1 million people.
Yeah.
And there's other cities that are bigger. And this seems very scalable. Hey, this is working. Let's get 2, let's get 3, let's get 4, let's get 5. What's the most you've seen someone have?
Just one client?
One client.
9.
Wow. What market?
Denver.
Wow. 800 calls a day?
Yep.
I'm going to do math. I'm embarrassed.
7,200?
7,200.
I can do that math.
Times 0.06. 432 homeowners a day, JP?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you recommend scaling up like that? I mean, why not?
Yeah. If you're willing to work, like if that person was focused in 5 zip codes, we would say no way. But this person is a big team focused in 80, 90 zip codes. So yeah.
I'm just typing something into the chat.
Yeah. And that's going to be dictated by, how many homeowners are you willing to take a listing with, and how much data do we have to call?
And guys, I don't bring JP on here to sit here and preach phone animal. I mean, that's his company. He does this for a living.
Yeah.
The point is like, I know the players in the space that are doing this at a high level, and clearly JP is doing this at a very high level. We can start finding some golden nuggets of how you can go and do this for yourself versus having to hire a vendor. JP is for hire to do this. And viral marketing is for hire to help you nurture. But I want to show you guys this, that if you step up your managerial skills and your hiring and training skills to become more of a business leader and manager, I mean, just imagine what can happen if you could afford, 2 VAs at $5 an hour in the Philippines. Or we also make Jamaica. But before I cut you out there, I also want to talk about Jamaica really quick. Why Jamaica?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from? That seems kind of okay.
Why Jamaica? Yeah. So frankly, we had a lot of conversations with our customers that were doing, like, having us do like inbound lead conversion, inbound buyer lead conversion. And they were
more longer conversations.
They were concerned about accent,
Yes.
just to be blunt again. And so we were looking for other countries that had a more American English accent, and English is their first language. We've made some job posts. It's kind of funny how it works. We just found one guy and ended up, now we're at like 75 in Jamaica.
And he's recruited them all just himself, probably off Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It's all organic now.
Yeah.
So the biggest reasons why, and we really suggest our Jamaica team for doing like inbound, more high specialty lists, because they understand our culture better. We travel to them, they travel to us. Proximity to the US is very close. They just understand our culture better, and which allows them to build rapport. So those inbound buyer leads that are raising their hand immediately, they're a little bit better at converting.
Got it. Fair enough.
Yeah. But it is a little bit more expensive because their cost of living is more expensive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man. What other questions do you guys have? What else do you want to know about outbound calling? This has been a very valuable interview, JP.
Frank, one thing I did want to reiterate.
Sorry, I did cut. Yeah, like I said, I cut you off. Go back to what you're going to say.
We're an open book. Like, and I know you are too, about a lot of your marketing practices. Like, we'll give you our scripting. That's not always the secret sauce that helps. But we're willing to have a conversation, even if you just want help to build out your own team. Yeah, happy to help as best we can.
That's what's so nice about these Keeping It Real shows is everyone realizes that there's no secret information.
Yeah,
it's pretty free. Information wants to be free. The work isn't actually doing the work, right? And that's where a lot of people are moving into the provided service, like what Carl does and what JP does. Yeah. But JP, we're at a full hour. I want to thank you so much. If you want to learn more about JP, go to phoneanimal.com, based out of Austin. JP, thank you so much. I'm going to get a copy of those scripts. So when you hop off of here, find them, send them to me. I'm going to post them here in the comments at the very top, if I remember to, pinned, so people can download them and see the scripts. But it's important to kind of see the context of what you're trying to find. Yeah, we talked about earlier on the phone.
And Frank, not to end this, not to cut you off, but like I do think that results, like ROI, is important. And do you mind me just like sharing like what, because we keep track of all of our nurtures.
Yeah, so these things eventually close. You got to pay back the marketing spend. What is it?
Yeah. So what we typically see from our nurtures, and we track all of our nurtures to listing. We know that 1 in 8 of these nurtures, of our nurtures at least, will list within 12 months. And so if you were doing this in-house, that's something that you could track, which means, hey, if you're getting 20 to 30 seller nurtures a month, that's 3 listing opportunities. However, average time historically for us for nurture generated to nurture listing is 6 months. In the past year, which has been a crazier time, it's been 4 months, it's been 117 days. But I just want you to know, like, hey, if you're going to do this, like, don't expect your VA to get you a closing month 1. Like this does take some work. You're calling longer term out leads, have some patience, have the budget build up for it. But after that, depending on what your average GCI is, average price point in your area, the returns are pretty phenomenal. And I'll just start really expecting those returns to come in month 6.
That's great, JP. JP, thank you so much. So JP Wells Flanimal, I'm Frank Klesses of Viral Marketing. Thanks for watching Keeping It Real. If you want to watch more shows, well, first off, the replay will be right here on YouTube, so you can go back and catch all the good stuff. It's also going to be up on keepingitreal.com. Go there, put your email address in, subscribe. You'll only get notified of good shows. And if you'd like the show of how it was conducted, you can watch all the previous ones back from years. We have wonderful guests. Go to the YouTube channel and search by most popular. You'll probably see some of the best ones with the most views that's out. It's probably a good place to start. So I say thank you very much for coming. We'll conclude right there. JP, have a wonderful day. Thank you, sir.